The Galactic War Council, representing 47 species from across known space, had been hastily convened in the Grand Hologram Auditorium. The immense chamber, designed to accommodate beings of every conceivable size, shape, and dimensional preference, hummed with a nervous energy that seemed to make the very fabric of reality vibrate. Emergency lights pulsed in frequencies calibrated for all visual ranges, from ultraviolet to gamma perception, a universal signal that something had gone terribly wrong. At the center of the auditorium, the High Chancellor of the Zorblaxian Confederation stood upon his ceremonial hover platform, the ancestral crystals embedded in his exoskeleton, glowing with increasing intensity as his agitation grew. His voice resonated through the neural translators installed throughout the chamber. Esteemed representatives of the sentient cosmos, the High Chancellor began his words simultaneously translated into 47 distinct communication patterns. We face unprecedented crises that threaten the very fabric of our galactic society. The quantum plague has now infected 17 major star systems, causing reality fluctuations that have already erased 3 minor moons and 1 historically insignificant planet. Holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing graphs, charts, and real-time footage of the quantum plague's effects, buildings phasing in and out of existence, citizens suddenly finding themselves with additional limbs or missing crucial organs, and in one particularly disturbing case, an entire city where all matter had spontaneously turned into exotic desserts. Furthermore, the High Chancellor continued his crystal formations, now pulsating with anxiety. The void locusts have been spotted, emerging from the dimensional rift near the Cygnus arm. Initial reports suggest they've already consumed 30% of the void matter that stabilizes that region of space-time. More displays appeared, these showing swarms of impossibly large insectoid creatures that seem to both exist and not exist simultaneously, their mandibles tearing into the dark fabric of space itself, leaving nothing but empty whiteness behind. The representatives reacted with varying displays of distress. The methane-breathing Jupiterians released worried bubbles that floated toward the ceiling. The crystalline hive mind of Betelgeuse twice splintered into anxiety fractals, and the sentient gas clouds of Formalhaut began to rain acid tears onto their protective containment fields. We have gathered our finest strategic minds, the High Chancellor announced, gesturing to the inner circle of seats where the most respected tacticians of each species sat at attention, including, for the first time, a representative from Earth. All compound eyes, sensory stalks, and perception apparatuses turned toward the newest addition to the Galactic War Council. The human representative sat awkwardly in a specially designed swivel chair, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Unlike the other representatives who wore ceremonial armor, symbiotic defense organisms, or projected intimidating force fields, the human wore what appeared to be formal attire that seemed simultaneously too tight around the neck and too loose around the waist. The fabric moved in strange ways that distracted several of the more visually focused species. Humans have only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. The High Chancellor explained, his tone suggesting a mixture of doubt and desperate hope. But they have displayed remarkable, unconventional thinking in previous minor crises. The Council voted 17 to 30 in favor of including them in this emergency session. The human nodded, attempting a friendly smile that unintentionally displayed too many teeth for the comfort of several prey species present, who instinctively activated their defensive mechanisms. A minor electromagnetic pulse resulted, temporarily disabling 3 hovering translation drones. As we begin our strategic assessment, the High Chancellor continued after the drones were reset, we will hear reports from each affected sector. Admiral Zixbar of the Jovian Nebula Defense Force will present the tactical analysis of the quantum plague's spread pattern. A massive tentacle being floated to the central podium, its skin shifting through colors as it communicated. The quantum plague appears to be sentient, or at least semi-conscious. The Admiral began projecting a 3-dimensional map of the infection spread. It targets highly organized systems, first transportation networks, communication grids, and unfortunately, defense installations. We've lost contact with 43% of our quantum barrier generators in the affected regions. The human representative leaned forward, appearing to study the holographic display with interest. Several species noted this apparent engagement with approval, their appendages making notations in their atmospheric diaries or neural records. Our simulations predict total collapse of reality stability in the affected regions within 26 standard cycles. The Admiral continued the colors on its skin, becoming increasingly urgent shades of ultraviolet. We've attempted quantum firewall protocols, consciousness-based defensive algorithms, and even sacrificial dimension, shedding all without success. The human nodded, then did something that caused immediate alarm among the gathered representatives. They stretched their arms above their head, rolled their neck in a circular motion that produced several audible cracking sounds, and then yawned, an action that to several predatory species resembled a threat display. The Zorblaxian High Chancellor's crystals flashed in confusion. "Representative of Earth, do you wish to comment on the Admiral's report? Perhaps your species has encountered similar reality-destabilizing phenomena." The human blinked slowly and shook their head. "No, please continue, I'm listening." The Council proceeded with increasing urgency as the Void Locust report was delivered by Field Commander Talak of the Dimensional Border Patrol, a being composed entirely of semi-solid quantum probability. The locusts appear to be attracted to organized void matter, particularly the stabilized pockets we use for faster-than-light travel corridors. Projection models suggest they will reach major population centers within 15 cycles. We've deployed void chaff and transdimensional repellents, but they only slow the swarms temporarily. The holographic display shifted to show the locust swarms growing larger, consuming more of the fabric of space with each passing moment. The chamber's ambient temperature dropped several degrees as the collective anxiety of the representatives manifested physically. It was at this precise moment, when the dual crises had been fully outlined, when the imminent collapse of galactic civilization seemed unavoidable, when 47 species were simultaneously experiencing existential dread, that the human representative did something that would forever change interstellar diplomacy. They yawned again, more deeply this time, their eyes briefly closing. And then, in full view of the Galactic War Council, they appeared to adjust their position in the swivel chair to become more comfortable, leaned back slightly, and allowed their eyelids to remain closed. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. "The human has initiated emergency protocols," shouted a representative from the silicon-based consciousness of Alpha Centauri, their crystalline form vibrating with alarm. "They are entering a defensive state. Analyze their vital signs," ordered the High Chancellor, his hover platform rising higher as if to escape a potential threat. The chamber's automatic defense systems activated, creating shimmering barriers between the representatives and the seemingly incapacitated human. The Betelgeuse empathic cloud drifted closer, extending tendrils of psychic awareness. "I'm detecting unusual brainwave patterns. They're shifting to a lower frequency, but remain surprisingly coherent. This could be a form of consciousness transference or psychic deployment." The Arcturian quantum computer, responsible for monitoring all biological functions in the chamber, began calculating possible scenarios at a rate that caused its cooling systems to emit distressed whines. The human's respiratory rate is decreasing, but follows a regular pattern. Heart rate reduced by 17%. Muscle tension decreasing systematically. This appears to be a controlled shutdown of non-essential systems. "Are they preparing for some kind of energy conservation before a major offensive?" asked the representative from the Pleiades Defense Consortium, their 7 eyes blinking in asymmetrical patterns of worry. The council erupted into chaos. The translator drones struggled to keep up with the overlapping questions and theories being shouted across the chamber. The Zorblaxian crystals throughout the room, sensitive to emotional states, began to vibrate at frequencies that threatened to shatter. "Could this be a form of psychological warfare?" suggested the hive mind of Betelgeuse 14, its crystalline structure fracturing and reforming in patterns of intense calculation. Perhaps they believe that by displaying calm in the face of existential threat, they can demoralize the enemy. Or it's a psychic probe, countered the gaseous entity from Formalhaut. Humans are known to have limited telepathic abilities, but perhaps in this state of reduced physical activity, they can extend their mental reach. Everyone guard your thoughts. The quantum plague and void locusts were momentarily forgotten as the Council's full attention focused on the sleeping human. Monitoring systems throughout the chamber were redirected to analyze every aspect of the human's condition: brain activity, micro-expressions, the specific frequency of the gentle snoring that had begun to emanate from them. The Arcturian quantum computer suddenly emitted a high-pitched alarm. "Alert! I'm detecting rapid eye movement beneath the human's closed eyelids. This could indicate internal visualization exercises or scenario mapping. Or they're communicating with unseen entities," added the representative from the shadow dimension of Proxima Centauri, their form becoming even more insubstantial with anxiety. We know so little about human perception ranges. As the human continued to sleep, the chaos in the council chamber intensified. The Zorblaxian crystals, now vibrating at near-critical frequencies, began to crack. The empathic cloud from Betelgeuse, overwhelmed by the emotional turmoil in the room, started to precipitate feelings of confusion onto the representatives below, creating a feedback loop of escalating panic. The human appears to have entered what their species refers to as a power nap, reported the Arcturian computer, after consulting its database of known sentient behaviors. Historical records suggest this may be a form of rapid cognition enhancement or mental reorganization. "They're strategizing," declared the High Chancellor, his hover platform now pressed against the ceiling of the chamber, in his attempt to gain distance from the perceived threat. "In the midst of our greatest crisis, they're formulating responses at levels we cannot perceive." The representative from the methane oceans of Jupiter 5 released a particularly large bubble of concern that floated to the ceiling and burst, releasing a puff of methane that, due to a malfunction in the chamber's atmosphere regulation system, briefly ignited and created a small, controlled explosion. The sound of the explosion, combined with the movement of the swivel chair as it slowly rotated from the human's shifting weight, finally disturbed the human's sleep. They opened their eyes, blinked several times, and looked around at the chamber in confusion. What they saw was unprecedented in the history of the Galactic War Council. The Zorblaxian High Chancellor was pressed against the ceiling, his crystals cracked and leaking luminescent fluid. The representative from Alpha Centauri had partially melted in anxiety. The empathic cloud was raining emotions indiscriminately. The holographic displays had multiplied and were showing not just the crises, but also detailed analyses of the human sleep patterns, brain activity, and possible strategic implications of their power nap. The human, straightened in their chair, rubbed their eyes and cleared their throat. The sound echoed through the silent chamber, as all 47 species awaited what they assumed would be a master strategic revelation. "Sorry about that," the human said, their voice amplified by the neural translators. "Jet lag from interstellar travel, you know how it is. But I had the strangest dream that gave me an idea about our problems." The collective focus of the Council intensified to such a degree that several of the more sensitive psychic species had to activate their mental shields to avoid being overwhelmed. The quantum plague. The human began stretching their arms above their head again. "You mentioned it. Targets organized systems, right? What if we give it something else to organize?" The council representatives exchanged confused glances, their various appendages, tentacles, and thought projectors indicating uncertainty. "Human social media." The human explained, pulling out a small device from their pocket. "It's chaotic, addictive, and constantly reorganizing itself. We could create a quantum interface and essentially give the plague an infinite playground of disorganized information to try to categorize and understand." The Arcturian quantum computer began rapid calculations. "Theoretical models suggest this could work. The plague would be diverted into trying to organize human digital social interactions, which our analysis suggests is mathematically impossible due to inherent contradictions and irrationality. And for the void, locusts, the human continued seemingly energized by their nap. I dreamed they were actually more like artists than destroyers. What if they're not consuming void matter, but reshaping it? Maybe we can direct them to areas that need transformation, like that unstable region near the galactic core that's been threatening to collapse into a supermassive black hole. The field commander of the Dimensional Border Patrol expanded their probability field in surprise. Our sensors do indicate the locusts leave behind traces of new, differently structured void matter. We never considered they might be creative rather than destructive. It's just a matter of perspective, the human said with a shrug. Sometimes you need to step back or take a quick nap to see the patterns differently. The High Chancellor, having cautiously lowered his hover platform, stared at the human with his compound eyes, cycling through expressions of disbelief, hope, and confusion. You solved both crises. While unconscious, the human smiled again, displaying too many teeth, but somehow now seeming less threatening to the prey species present. I wouldn't say solved exactly, just offered a different way of looking at them. Sometimes our brains make connections when we're not actively trying to force them. The council chamber, so recently in chaos, fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the soft hum of the holographic displays and the occasional drip of luminescent fluid from the High Chancellor's cracked crystals. Is this how humans typically approach strategic problems? Asked the hive mind of Betelgeuse Duthine, its crystalline structure reconfiguring into patterns of curiosity. Some of our best ideas come when we're relaxed or sleeping, the human admitted. It's why we value work-life balance. Constant stress actually reduces creative problem-solving. This concept appeared to be so alien to the assembled representatives that several translation drones briefly malfunctioned, unable to find appropriate conceptual mappings in the receiving species' languages. But the crises, protested the High Chancellor. The imminent destruction, the potential collapse of reality itself. How could you rest at such a time? The human's expression became more serious. With respect, High Chancellor, it's precisely during such times that a clear, rested mind is most valuable. Panic and exhaustion lead to poor decisions. Sometimes, the most strategic action is to take a step back, literally or figuratively, and approach the problem from a new angle. Fascinating, murmured the representative from the shadow dimension, its form solidifying slightly in interest. The human suggests strategic inaction as a form of action. The next several hours of the Galactic War Council meeting were unlike any in its long history. Instead of frantic deployment plans and desperate last stands, the representatives discussed how to implement the human's unusual suggestions. Quantum interfaces were designed to connect the quantum plague to human social media platforms, while void locust behavioral experts recalibrated their understanding of the swarms as potential allies in cosmic reconstruction rather than harbingers of destruction. Initial reports arriving via faster-than-light communications showed promising results. The quantum plague, upon exposure to human Twitter arguments and Instagram algorithms, became obsessively engaged in trying to organize and categorize the seemingly infinite and contradictory information. It spread, slowed, then halted entirely, as it devoted more resources to understanding why humans would share images of their food, or argue endlessly about topics of no strategic importance. Meanwhile, the void locusts, when guided toward the unstable region near the galactic core, began transforming the chaotic void matter into complex, beautiful patterns that actually strengthened the fabric of space-time. The Dimensional Border Patrol reported a 42% reduction in reality fluctuations in the affected areas. Throughout these developments, the human representative occasionally offered additional insights, but also took 2 more short naps each, causing significantly less alarm among the council members than the first. By the third power nap, Several other species had cautiously attempted their own versions of controlled rest, though with varying degrees of success. The gelatinous representatives from the Andromeda strand found they enjoyed the experience so much that they had to be awakened by gentle electrical stimulation to participate in the final vote. As the emergency session of the Galactic War Council drew to a close, the High Chancellor, his crystals now bandaged with regenerative nanofilm, addressed the assembly. Representatives of the sentient cosmos, we have witnessed an unprecedented approach to crisis management today. The human strategy of, he paused, consulting his translator, of chilling out and sleeping on it, has yielded results that our most sophisticated quantum algorithms failed to produce. The human nodded modestly, stifling another yawn. In recognition of this contribution, the Council proposes establishing a new strategic protocol to be known as the Human Restorative Cognitive Enhancement Technique, or, the High Chancellor paused again, looking at his notes, what humans apparently call taking a nap. The motion passed unanimously, with even the perpetually argumentative hive mind of Betelgeuse Doftend voting in favor, without their usual 17-point objection. As the representatives began to disperse, many approached the human with questions about this revolutionary strategic technique. How long should an optimal nap last? Could it be performed in groups? Did one need a special swivel chair to achieve the best results? The human answered as best they could, explaining that while there was actual science behind the benefits of short periods of sleep for cognitive function, the Galactic War Council had perhaps taken the concept to an extreme. Nevertheless, they patiently explained the basics of relaxation techniques, the importance of periodic disengagement from problems, and the cognitive benefits of allowing the unconscious mind to process information. In the weeks that followed, reports from across the galaxy indicated a strange new trend among the leadership of various species. Strategic meetings now included designated thinking pauses. The Zorblaxian High Command installed reclined surfaces in their war rooms. The crystalline hive mind of Betelgeuse Doftend developed a technique for partial consciousness suspension they called fragmented awareness redistribution, which was really just their version of napping. Most significantly, both major crises continued to resolve themselves through the application of the human's unconventional approaches. The quantum plague became so engrossed in human social media that it eventually evolved into a new form of benign artificial intelligence, specializing in content curation and meme generation. The void locusts, redirected to problematic regions of spacetime, became valued cosmic engineers transforming unstable areas into works of both functional and aesthetic significance. 6 months after the emergency session, the human representative received the highest honor the Galactic Council could bestow, the Order of the Celestial Innovator, a psychically enhanced medal that would periodically remind its wearer of their own brilliance at randomly selected moments, typically during important meetings or intimate conversations. In their acceptance speech, the human tried once more to explain that they had simply fallen asleep due to jet lag and exhaustion, and that any strategic insights had been largely accidental. This explanation was met with knowing nods and what passed for winks among the assembled dignitaries, all of whom were now convinced that the human was merely being modest about their revolutionary cognitive techniques. The incident entered galactic historical records as the Great Nap That Saved Civilization, and became required study at strategic academies across known space. Human representatives were subsequently invited to all major crisis meetings, where they were encouraged to fall asleep at critically important moments, in the hope that they would awaken with reality-altering insights. For their part, humans found their unexpected reputation as masters of strategic relaxation, both amusing and somewhat beneficial. Other species became significantly more patient with human idiosyncrasies, interpreting even their most bizarre behaviors as potentially containing hidden strategic wisdom. The swivel chair used by the human during the original council meeting was preserved in the Galactic Museum of Pivotal Artifacts, where it slowly rotated on a ceremonial platform, continuously scanned by visitors, hoping to absorb some of its perceived cognitive enhancement properties. And somewhere in the vast infinite cosmos, a quantum plague entity scrolled through pictures of Earth cats sitting in small boxes, trying to understand why such images generated such strong emotional responses, while void locusts created intricate patterns in the fabric of reality that, when viewed from certain dimensional angles, resembled a human, peacefully napping in a swivel chair, the unlikely hero who had saved the galaxy by simply taking a break. The universe, it seemed, had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is to close your eyes and trust that, given time and space, solutions will emerge from the most unexpected places, even from within a short, unintentional nap during the galaxy's most critical moment. As for the human representative, they received a promotion upon returning to Earth and filed a rather unusual expense report that included saving galactic civilization via unconscious problem-solving as a line item. The accounting department, showing uncharacteristic flexibility, approved it without question and even added a bonus for interdimensional crisis management through strategic inactivity. The human framed both the expense report approval and their psychic medal, hanging them side by side in their office as reminders that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to briefly stop trying to solve it at all.